Well, we're joined by Mark Schulman, author of Tel Aviv Diary and a columnist at Newsweek. Mark, the United States sending warships toward Venezuela. What message does this exactly send? Is it truly about drug cartels, or is Washington possibly signaling something bigger?
It sounds like it's saying something bigger. They don't need warships to intercept drug cartels, to be quite honest with you. Sorry, not the number of warships, the number of Marines involved. We would probably use special forces in order to deal with drug cartels and not Marines, and not this sort of number of Marines. The question is, what is President Trump trying to do with President Maduro of Venezuela, who's been a long time obstacle to the United States in various ways? So it really is not clear. I mean, I really, to be quite honest with you, I have no great insight into what he's thinking. And this is pretty much, I mean, I'm sure someone was behind it, but this sort of almost came out of the blue to some extent. Yes, he designated these organizations, these narco terrorism organizations, as literally narco terrorism organizations. And yes, there's been a long-standing connection between narcotic smuggling and terrorism. I had a good friend who probably 25 years ago, when I was in graduate school, wrote a book about narco terrorism, and she's been following this for all of these years. So there's a clear connection. Terrorists make lots of money all over the world through narcotic smuggling. I mean, even in the Middle East, Hezbollah was making lots and lots of money smuggling narcotics out of Lebanon over for many, many years. And of course, the Assad government was doing the same. So there's a clear connection between narcotics and terrorism all over the world. Of course, this goes together to some extent with his domestic policies relating to immigrants. After all, he claimed he was sending all the narco terrorists that are in the United States, and he basically said many of them came from Venezuela. So here he's trying to tie this all together and say, here, look, here are all the narco terrorism rings. Here, they're starting from here. They go into the United States. We're fighting them in the United States, and we're fighting them back in Venezuela. So I would gather from, that's the sort of PR line he's going to go with. There's some truth to it. I mean, it's not made up out of the air. There's clearly some real narco terrorism, and of course from Mexico as well. The Mexican government has objected to designating some of the narcotics rings inside Mexico as terrorist rings. They say they want to deal with it themselves, although they've had a poor record, let's put it that way, over the years in dealing with it. Some places have been more successful. So we'll see. I mean, look, again, Venezuela's been a very problematic country vis-a-vis the United States now. I guess it goes for 20 years at this point. I mean, Colombia is an example of a success story where there's a lot of narco terrorism going on in Colombia. The United States was able to work together with the government to bring about a level of peace between the separatist terrorists in Colombia, and also bring down the drug trade tremendously. So now the question, what can be done in terms of Venezuela, in terms of Mexico? But of course, everything is backwards ultimately, because ultimately the drugs will find their way to the United States regardless of where they're being made. The problem is on the demand side. You can't solve the drug problem without solving the demand side problem, whether it's caused by painkillers that turn into being something permanent, or other things in drug related that have been going on for decades. You need to deal with the root cause of the drug problem. Getting the people who are smuggling the drugs, well, that's good. They're criminals. They should be arrested if you can. But that's not going to eliminate the problem.
So, Mark, if these Marines that are going to be stationed outside of Venezuela might have little impact on the actual drug cartels, what's the message, as you hinted at, then, that it sends to Venezuela? Is this a threat and an escalation that the Trump administration wants to have? What could be the response?
Look, that's the threat. Venezuela has responded by drafting its reserve forces, whatever they may be. And also, they've stated that no drones may fly. No domestic drones, no drone flights over any of Venezuela, afraid that Americans will send drones. Look, the United States has a long history of intervening in South America. It goes back to the turn of the century, Nicaragua and all sorts of other places. Probably 15 to 20 times in the early part of the 20th century, the United States intervened. More recently, the United States intervened in Panama during the Bush administration. So there's a history of it, but not all that much more recently. Thankfully, I think President Trump has turned away from his idea of seizing the Panama Canal. At least we haven't heard about that recently. But look, he's showing some muscle. He likes showing muscle. We'll see what happens. Again, look, the leader of Venezuela is not a good person. I have to say that easily. There was an election. He lost the election, but somehow magically he won the election. And so he's not a positive force to South America. The one thing I want to say, and I think this is important to realize, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, there were no democracies in South and Central America. Today, Venezuela, maybe one other country, Cuba, obviously, are the only 2 or 3 countries in South and Central America that are not democracies. So whatever the difficulties are, however the challenges are, real change has occurred over the last 50 years in South and Central America, and it's a change for the good.
All right, Mark Schulman, great to have you with us and hear what exactly this signal could mean coming from the Trump administration. Thank you.
My pleasure.